Windows 11 has leaked early. Pretty much the entire Windows 11 operating system has appeared online, showing a completely new user interface, a new start menu, and a lot of other small features to go along with it. Now, Microsoft has kind of been simplifying Windows for dual screen devices since they launched Windows 10. They were supposed to launch something called Windows 10X, which was specifically for dual screen devices, like the Surface Neo, which, RIP. But it seems like they've completely scrapped Windows 10X, and they have now come up with a new OS called Windows 11. Now, I think you originally brought this up to me. What are your first impressions of what you've seen of the new operating system?
Yeah. Okay. So, first impressions, it looks like Windows 10X, almost identical to Windows 10X. And you mentioned Windows 10X. Essentially, what that was a stripped down version of Windows. And you mentioned the Surface Neo. That was a product I was really, really excited for. And I think I even mentioned on this podcast how much I was looking forward to that product when we were talking about the Surface Duo. But so essentially, what the Surface Neo is a dual screen tablet device that folded up, and it had a hinge in the middle. It had two screens. You could open it up, you'd have two independent screens, or you could fold it over and just use one screen, or you could put a keyboard on half of the screen, and you'd get almost like a touch bar at the top, keyboard, and then a full screen. So it was this very flexible kind of device, and Windows 10X was the kind of brain of that device. And honestly, the more they talked about Windows 10X, the dumber it seemed. So it was a version of Windows 10 that couldn't run legacy apps. So it couldn't run your regular, executables. It was very stripped down. It was very it lacked so many features that you would expect from Windows 10, but it had this updated appearance with, slightly rounded corners. Icons on the taskbar were now centered. So, eventually, I think Microsoft understood that it wasn't a good idea, and they canceled it. They canceled Windows 10X. And what Windows 11 seems to be taking the good parts of Windows 10X, or the parts that most people liked, and combining that with the foundation of Windows 10. So overall, from what we've seen so far of Windows 11, because this is a leak of an early build, we're supposed to see more of it really, really soon. But essentially what Windows 11 is a very minor upgrade to Windows 10, almost entirely visual, of making Windows 10 look simpler, cleaner. A lot of people have complained that Windows 10 is very busy. There's a lot of information on the screen. Windows 11 is supposed to clean that up with the idea or the visual style of Windows 10X, which was a much more stripped down appearance, but still having the functionality that you would have gotten from a Windows 10. Now, my opinion of this is I'm not a big fan. When Windows 10 was announced and Microsoft brought up Windows 10, they said that this was the last version of Windows. And essentially, they would just build on top of it for going forward. Kind of like what Apple did with OS 10 for years, before they just called it Mac OS. That was the last version of Mac OS. They didn't really need to bring in a new number. They could just grow on that and, bring in new versions of it every year or so that slightly upgraded the experience. And that's kind of what a lot of us expected from Windows 10. It was a great foundation to build upon. And this update of what Windows 11 seems could have easily just been an upgrade to Windows 10. It could have been a Windows 10 service pack or a Windows 10.1, because the changes are almost entirely visual and not necessarily big changes under the hood. Like, we're still going to have a lot of the issues that Windows 10 has, like legacy apps, for example. I don't know if many people who don't use Windows know. If you're a Mac user, right now, there are two versions of settings. You have the traditional control panel that existed back in Windows 7, Vista, 98, 95, going all the way back. And you also have the new settings app that was introduced in Windows 8. And the reason why there's two of them is because of some of the features that still existed in the old style control panel hasn't been migrated over to the new style of settings app. And it makes it really annoying of like, oh, I need to set this setting. I go to my settings app. Oh, it's not here. I got to go back to the old control panel and do it there. It's archaic. It's not really great design. And that's unfortunately a thing that kind of exists all throughout Windows. Is there's so many legacy kind of holes in Windows that kind of makes it, you have to go back to a previous experience just to change something. Now, that being said, the benefit of this, and the one thing I really like, is one, that Windows 10X is gone. And I think the huge benefit of that is we talked about what Apple was doing with Mac OS and iPad OS of kind of making these operating systems, specifically iPad OS, more locked down and more minimalist and honestly less functional. And we talked very recently about the new iPad Pro, which is so powerful and can do so much, but Apple just won't let it do that. That was the biggest fear that a lot of us had with Windows 10X, is that we could get these really cool devices, but we're going to be locked down on what we could do with them by software. The good thing about, Windows 10X being gone and Windows 11 being the new kind of standard that's going to eventually kind of take over is that you get that feel of a new modern OS, even though it's not that new, but you don't lose out on any of the functionality, whether it's a dual screen device or a tablet or, whatever device people decide to use this operating system with, you're not going to be limited by the functionality of the software, which is something I'm a big, big fan of, and I'm definitely a big supporter of. The one other thing that I'm not a really big fan of, and it's a small one, so what they've done with the start menu, they've updated the start menu again. It's now centered in the screen. You can change it, but by default, it's going to be centered in the screen. And they've got rid of live tiles. And if anyone is not familiar with live tiles are an icon that was first introduced in Windows Phone, actually. And it was Microsoft's way of kind of modernizing their interface of saying, hey, it's not just an icon, it's an icon and a widget in one. So for example, if you have an icon for the news, for your news app, not only is it just going to be the icon for the news app, but it will also show you, the top news stories just in the app icon, so that you can, you can read the headlines and then click on the app and then go in, exactly what news story you want to go in. In the Photos app, it won't just be an icon, it will show you a preview of the photos in that app. And you click on it and then you see all the photos. So it's something like you could get information just from a glance. The weather app, you could see the information in the icon of what your weather is going to be like today and tomorrow. And you could change the size of it. So let's say if you wanted the weather app to show you the entire week's forecast without you actually having to go into the app, you can just increase the size of the icon and it will show you the whole week's worth of weather. Now, Microsoft has unfortunately gotten rid of live tiles. They're completely gone in Windows 11, and it's just going to be simple icons that they've completely updated. So they updated icons all across the system, which once again was an issue with older versions of Windows. We had icons on Windows right now, on Windows 10, on my computer right now. I can look at an icon that existed in Windows 95, which is crazy to think, but that's just the reality of how Windows is right now. Windows 11 is supposed to change that. So for the benefit of, it's going to look better, it's going to be more updated, there is the downside, at least to me, that live tiles goes away, which is something that I really liked. But how about you? You're an Apple user. You mostly use Macs and iPhones and stuff like that. Have you seen much of the Windows 11 leak, and what do you think of the aesthetic of it overall?
I've seen it. To be honest, not that big of a deal to me. Like you said, I'm mostly a Mac OS user. The biggest change that I noticed was the centered taskbar, but like you said, you can move that to the left. It kind of just looks weird to me for Windows to be straight in the middle. But other than that, I mean, the odd time I've used Windows, like when I'm helping my mom with something on her laptop, doesn't seem that different to me. I never got used to having live tiles, so I don't feel the pain of not having live tiles anymore. But it just looks like a clean operating system to me. And, I didn't have to deal with the convolutedness of having a settings and a control panel. I only knew there was a control panel. So, hey, went completely over my head. But I do like the new look of this Windows. But if you were to show me Windows 10 and Windows 11 side by side, I couldn't tell you which one is which. Except I did note that the new Windows have rounded edges. So they're kind of stealing that from Apple a bit. They're taking round edges for their window sizes. And once again, this is an early build that has leaked. You mentioned, we're going to be seeing more of this soon. Well, on Thursday, June 24th, Windows is having an official press conference to kind of officially reveal Windows 11 for the first time. So by then, we'll get a better look at, okay, what's the final product of Windows 11 going to be like? And even at that point, I'm sure they're just going to release a beta for sort of Windows insiders to kind of test and give them their feedback. And who knows, someone else may really miss the live tiles and, put a good word in for them. And by the time Windows 11 launches to the masses, live tiles could be back in. You could get your 1 week weather view just by looking at a glance. A cool thing that I did see is that there's a new Xbox app that's integrated into Windows 11. So anyone who has Windows 11 is going to have this Xbox app, which allows quick access to Xbox Games Pass, the social parts of Xbox Network, and the Xbox Store. Now, this podcast being what it is, gaming is always going to take a focus, right? And in the previous podcast, I kind of said that, hey, I saw the light of Xbox Game Pass. I see what Xbox is trying to do. And now with this new Windows 11 operating system coming with the Xbox app integrated into it, built in already, this is even more, I guess, down that path. This is even more of the light that I saw, right? I could see a very near future where you have, I guess, an Xbox virtual console pre-installed onto your Windows 12 device, or who knows if they say they're going to keep Windows 11 for the future. I could see an Xbox, hopefully, this is the last operating system we ever build until 2 years from now when they need to sell something else. But yeah, just how tightly integrated Microsoft and Xbox are becoming, even though Xbox is owned by Microsoft, so obviously they're tightly integrated. But I mean, this is a step in the direction of what you said. Xbox wants to be a gaming software company, right? That's their end game. So the visual changes, it looks nice to me. It looks like a good operating system. Like I said, mainly Mac OS, so I can't really say there's anything that I'm missing from the previous Windows 10 version. But I'm excited to see what they have to say on June 24th. And I'm definitely looking forward to what you have to say if you do end up trying out Windows 11. I'd like to see, what kind of things you notice, what things you miss, what things you appreciate being different. And I'm really looking forward to see how the Xbox app integrates into Windows 11.
Yeah, 100% the same. Like, I imagine all of these changes are things that I could get used to. That being said, the one thing with Windows users that's very different from Mac OS users is we generally get comfortable with the operating system that we have, and we don't like to switch. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone like myself or a lot of people out there see Windows 11, it looks cool, but just decide to stick with Windows 10. It's been leaked that the end date for support for Windows 10 is going to be 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if most of us end up using it right up until that date. But I am really interested to see what they show with Windows 11. And I guess one question I have for you, like, we both talked about the iPad Pro and how that was so close and yet so far from getting me to switch teams. Is there anything that Microsoft could do in the announcement for Windows 11, like one feature that could at least get you interested into switching over to a PC that maybe you don't have now or something that you really want?
I mean, there isn't really anything that Microsoft themselves can do. Really what it is the PC manufacturers. Like, one thing that really intrigues me, one laptop, if I could get any laptop in the world right now, it would be the Asus X13 Flow. That is that is the most amazing futuristic device to me. Because like you said, the the M1 iPad Pro was so close to being perfect, so close, but it was just flawed. But when you look at the X13 Flow, and anyone who doesn't know what that is, you should definitely look it up. It is a 2-in-1 laptop. You can take the screen, it's a touchscreen, flip it all the way around, use it like a tablet. You can prop it up on the keyboard, use it like a tent, and there is like an advanced gaming mode with a proprietary, let's say, external adapter with a proprietary slot. You plug it in, and this external adapter has an external, I want to say a 3080 GPU. It's either a 3080 or 3070, pretty much the best GPU you could buy right now. And it has like 4 USB slots on the side, and it has power built in, and it has a micro SD card reader and HDMI and display port out. So it pretty much turns this laptop 2-in-1 into a desktop PC in terms of the graphical capabilities and processing power. So that is if one device that would get me to switch. If I could get an Asus X13 Flow, yeah, see you later, Mac OS.
Yeah.
But it's not cheap, one, and also the external GPU is not cheap also.
Yeah.
So it's it'd be a heavy investment, to say the least.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think that just shows the benefit of why, at least me personally, why I love Windows. Like you mentioned, the centered icons. I actually use centered icons in Windows 10. It's something that you can enable with but it's something that you can enable with extra add-ons. I use a tool called PowerToys, which is like this extension to Windows that allows better window management. And it's little things like that really allow Windows to be tailored to a specific person, and a specific device, whether it's a tablet or a 2-in-1 or something that has an external GPU. Like, there's a lot of flexibility there that I think is the biggest benefit to Windows, even with all of its downsides, which is something I would love to see Apple kind of adopt. I don't think they ever will, but I'd love to see them adopt that kind of flexibility, and maybe one day they could convince me to switch over to an iPad if they did.
Yeah, I think Apple wants to tell you how to use their devices very much.
Yeah.
To the point where they limit what their devices are even capable of doing. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 2 years they scrap the whole A series chip altogether and they start putting their M series chips in their iPhones too.
Yeah.
And then it's the M3 chip in your iPhone, iPad, MacBook Pro, Mac Pro even. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to put an M chip in your Apple Watch. Just to say, this is the craziest thing we've ever done. Yeah, but you still can't do anything with it, so why? But yeah, if it happens, you heard it here first. An M chip in everything from your iPhone to your Apple Watch to your AirPods. They don't even have a screen, and they're gonna get an M series chip too.